Well, hello everybody. Welcome to INET3011W, Social Impact of IT. This is week one. This week we're going to be going over the syllabus, talking a little bit about the course in general, and then kind of on a week-by-week basis, there'll be these videos that, 10 minutes or so that kind of walk through the subject matter and, kind of talk about the reasons for the different topics and modules that are in there. So to kind of jump into this, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to cover today, which is review the syllabus. So I'm going to walk through that next. Expectations around writing. So this is a W course, which means it's writing intensive, where we're going to spend some time building on different forms of writing. So there'll be things you'll do on a weekly basis. 3 papers that we'll cover through the syllabus as well in assignments. And then really kind of work towards some interesting things that we've identified in kind of what we call the WEC process, so writing and rich curriculum, and how we're looking to introduce and add a lot of value around us in IT doing a lot of writing that we didn't think we did as much, but some things that are formal like RFPs, some things informal that might be a presentation, and things that are very informal, which might be an email or just correspondence. And then week by week lecture topics we'll cover as well. So I'm going to flip over here to the syllabus and kind of walk through this. So my information. So just so you know about me, I've been with the university for over 24 years now, teaching in various courses, everything from operating systems to network programming to languages to IT operations. And my current day job is I'm the CTO of Converge One. I've been with them for 6 years, and the previous company that acquired or that I was with that got acquired by Converge One, Spanlink, I've been with since 1989. So not too many bouncing around, but you can read the rest of this at your leisure if you want. Part of what I'd like to also say about my information is that whether it's email or my cell phone, please reach out to me. I know that this is an online course, which means just by its nature, it's a little more self-directed, and I don't want people to get kind of lost or have questions on things that don't get answered. That's not, not the intended purpose of online. So please reach out to me, email, call. Just know that if you call and I'm not going to know your number, I won't answer the first time, but try to add you in. Okay, so a little bit about the course. The purpose of this course is a little different than I think traditional things we've done in IT courses in the past, which we've always tried to teach the technology. This is more about how do we look at ourselves as a holistic member of an IT organization. And we're going to do this in kind of 3 parts. So there's an individual part. So the first 4 weeks are going to be all around what is your individual contribution to IT. The second part is all about how do you work as a team. Nothing gets done by yourself anymore in IT. So how does project management play a role? How does leadership play a role? How does then getting into external factors and other entities play a role? And then the third one is really taking yourselves out of your own shoes, comfort zone, whatever, and thinking about yourself, from other people's perspectives. And maybe it's from a global perspective, your non-citizenship, where you live today. So maybe if you're born in the U.S., you're going to think about this from a perspective of China, or maybe if you're coming from a foreign country, thinking about it from the U.S. perspective. We'll have a paper that is actually going through each one of these sections and allowing you to kind of put that down on paper and put your thoughts down and submit that. Here's kind of the 3 things I talked about, how that goes through, and really when it wraps up, the educational purpose for this course is, again, to make a well-rounded individual in IT, but also give you a good flavor of what it really is like day in, day out. And that's one thing that really isn't taught anywhere else that I've found. You hit the ground running, and immediately somebody's going to hit you with an RFP. And what's an RFP? How do I fill it out? What's the purpose of it? Why am I doing it? And so instead of a lot of this on-the-job stuff, what I wanted to do with this course is really get people thinking more specifically about what goes on day in, day out. It isn't as a developer, you sit down and you write code, you're part of a team that has, Scrum meetings and Agile, this and that. If you're a project manager, it's not just simply saying, well, I'm going to run the project. You have to understand, how do you motivate? How do you get people to complete things? How do you know where you are in certain parts of this? So through this entire semester, we're going to be walking through different forms of different positions, and again, making you think a little bit more about being a holistic form of IT. There's only one book that really seemed to kind of hit the mark. The rest of it is all filled in with other open source texts or websites or things that are a little more timely. So this Accelerate book is the one that'll show up, I think, in about 3 or 4 different parts of the course, more in the beginning than the end. And then the rest of it is just kind of the rest of the things that are linked per week. And I'll show you kind of week 1, week 2, and what that looks like. Obviously, being this is an online course, you're going to have to use a browser. And for things like Flipgrid and other ways of interaction, you're going to need the media formats. So you could do anything from recording to participating in online collaboration. Here's our course outcomes. I'll let you read through that. Just so you know that the university is designed that there's university level outcomes that gets to college level outcomes, that gets to program level outcomes, that map to course level outcomes, and these map all the way down to every assignment. So very purposeful in how this is done. So as these kind of apply through different forms of assessment, which is mainly going to be writing in this course, that's the outcomes that we've kind of plugged through. As we get into some of the standard stuff, this is our standard grade distribution. Always is the question of extra credit and curving. Curving, in my opinion, is where probably I did something more wrong than you, where I've either put the course together in a way that nobody was able to achieve certain percentage grades, nor is it that maybe all the material was taught well, but the evaluation piece really wasn't done as well. So probably unlikely that we're going to have a curve, and extra credit is only really given across the board. I believe that it needs to be something that's fair for everybody, and so if there is to be extra credit, it'll be something that's available for everyone. University policy is the only one. You can read through most of this, but the only one I want you to be aware of is if there's anything that is due on a certain date that doesn't have a penalty with it. So let's say that there, from a writing assignment perspective, if it's submitted late, there's going to be a 5% per school day penalty. If there's something like an exam that has a closed window, 2 things need to happen. I need to be notified of that prior to it being due, and then it has to be based on one of these legitimate absences by the U. I'm not that stuck on very specific, because I know things happen and we can't write every known thing down, and with crazy things like COVID, things are different. So please just inform me ahead of time, and let's just make it. My whole purpose in this is to make sure it's fair for everybody. It isn't fair if somebody comes back 3 weeks after something was due and said, "Oh, now I should take the exam," or I want to, now get this thing done. Well, you've had an extra 3 weeks, and the other students haven't. So that's the whole point there. As we look through the modules, I'll just kind of step through these. This week is all about, kind of walking through, this course, and then talking about, how society and technology kind of blend together. And we'll be going through a lot of this, over the given weeks. Really getting into the next module is really about licensing and legal issues around things we produce. What is an end user license agreement? What is a right to use? What are open source licenses? And then the third one, we get into development methodology. So what does it mean to be a developer in IT? Some people like development and they want to be a developer. Some people like to develop, but they don't want to be a developer, but they want to kind of be around that. And some people don't want to develop at all, but without developing software, most of what we do is kind of worthless. There's got to be some software in there somewhere. And then getting into 4 is professionalism. And this is really the way to think about how you not just conduct yourself, but what it means to be in a professional setting in IT. Then we jump into Module 5, which is around plagiarism and originality. And this is one where there's a stark difference between the academic world and the professional world. Take the example of open source code. If I was to ask you to produce something for a course, for a letter grade, I need to evaluate your ability to understand that. And we think about things in kind of three layers. We think knowledge. If I tell you an apple's red, then you mark down the apple's red, and so you've remembered that. The analyze is the next level, and analyze is really thinking about, okay, I understand the difference between a red and a green apple, and I can discern between them. And then you get to apply. And apply is really kind of taking that apple and saying, okay, well, I can make a pie with it. I could, eat it raw, or I can do all these things. But you have a lot of knowledge that now gets you from that idea of, and there's charts that talk about this, data goes to information, information goes to knowledge, and knowledge goes to wisdom. So as we think about that, in the academic world, if I was to ask you to produce some software and you just grabbed it from GitHub and plugged it in, that was no learning at all. Now, if you did that in a professional setting, that's what you're supposed to do, because that's the way it works. So this module is really all about kind of drawing the line in the sand, but also thinking about what does it mean in citing resources or other things that you might be doing from a writing perspective. Module 6 is getting into teams. So now we're migrating from individual to team pieces of this course, and thinking about what is a group, what is a team, what does it mean to work in one? Again, maybe thinking of things outside of your comfort zone or maybe your specific role. Then we get into meetings. What is a meeting? We have meetings because it's Tuesday at 9 o'clock and we decided 20 years ago to have this meeting. Not a great idea. We need to think about, especially now with so many people remote and working from home, and that what it means to really be successful or have meaningful meetings that have output. Then we get into agreements and contracts, which are, it's a very interesting thing. We're not going to get into very deep in the whole legal aspect of it, but we are going to think about, okay, why do we need these agreements and why do we have to have contracts? And what does that do for us? Do we really want to take a contract and always go sue somebody and go to court? No, because the lawyers only win there. So, but from an IT perspective, we have to have these in place so everybody knows the rules of the game. Why are we doing this? And it's usually some form of barter, right? I'll do work and you pay me. No different than anything else in the world, but we like to have that contract so nobody can come back and say, well, I'm not paying you because you didn't do what you said you would do. Well, I did. Here's the contract, and here's exactly what we said we would do. We then get into some leadership. So what does it mean to be a leader versus a manager? There's a very big difference there. Leadership is more about motivation and getting people all on the same page and, getting a team to be successful versus it just being mechanical or just kind of following the rules. And then kind of starting to shift into the third module or third section of this, which is thinking about the global setting. So what is a government? How does it help to protect us? How does it make decisions? Then we think about all our cultural and ethical differences. So what does it mean to have, a religion that might do, play a factor in decisions that are made, or things that we've, I think in the U.S. been struggling with a little bit most recently on, other differences that people have, and how does that play into our, our day-to-day work? How do we make decisions? How do we be fair? How do we make sure that, we're embracing the differences of people and making sure that applies really in IT? And then, getting into 12 is more about it's security and privacy, but it's mostly privacy. Thinking about of all the things that we're doing today, especially with the advent of the internet, the 2016 elections, a whole bunch of different things. What is privacy and how far should we take it? Should it be that everything's private and we never do anything? Or should we think about the fact that, if you're a cancer patient and the data that comes from you individually could help many other people live, maybe you just strip the name off and use the rest of the data to benefit other people, but where do we draw the line? Then we jump into environmental impact. So, what are we doing out there, and how are we managing the carbon footprint? Are we in IT worse than automobiles? Are we thinking about how solar and different forms of power might impact us. Data centers are power hogs. That they suck up quite a bit of our power grid, and we just kind of leave computers running 24/7, and there's things that we need to start thinking about and doing a little differently there. And then finally, wrapping up with the economic impact. What does all this do when we get to the point of money or transactions, let's call it, and then how does the decisions we make in IT and applications, especially when we think about massive things like the internet, the iPhone, cloud computing, all of these things really have changed how we think about things and how we pay for things. An easy one to think about is television. It used to be that, you went up to your analog TV and you just clicked to the right channel. That's when I was a kid. And then we got to, a little bit more of cable TV and then digital TV. And now we're finally getting to a point I thought we would have been at 20 years ago, which is kind of just paying for what you want. I'll pay $3.99 for this. I'll pay $2.99 for that. Different forms of Disney Plus and Peacock. And, now we're kind of building on a family of platforms instead of picking and choosing a massive grouping of things that for some reason somebody thought these would all make sense to go together. But we like to watch what we like to watch, and it's always a little different. So that's the syllabus. If I jump back to the rest here, I've talked about this. The only thing to bring up is that we sometimes call it not IT, we call it ICT when you want to add the communication element to it. So that's the only kind of difference there. Again, we talked about through the syllabus, what is the individual contribution? What does it really mean? What kind of company do you really want to work for? And things change radically. I think there was a statement made a couple of years ago that 80% of students today are going to be working in industries that don't exist today. So, there's a lot of opportunity to kind of build whatever you want. From a global perspective, group perspective, again, it's really about how do you be successful in a team. I think a lot of us that came up the IT world always thought we could do everything ourselves, and we did for a little while, but then we realized we can't project manage and develop and be leaders and go to board meetings. Everybody has to play their role. And again, the final wrap up of Global and Society is really getting to and again, this course doesn't cover everything, but it gives you a good grounding and a good understanding of kind of where we're after in getting you as a well-rounded IT professional post-graduation in companies. So when we look at global, we're only touching a few aspects of it, and thinking about it from a pretty macro perspective instead of kind of drilling in. But at least it gives you a grounding to say, okay, this was important. I understood why. Now I'm going to go figure out the rest of it. So for this week, there's Flipgrid, self-intro, and as well as an open question: ethical choices would you make or anticipate to make in this field? And I want you to think about this right now from the individual side. I want you to think beyond, though, the standard, I won't cheat and I won't take bribes, and that's a common thing. I want you to think about some, things maybe around equality and diversity, microaggressions. How would you deal with something if somebody came to you and said, I'm not going to promote this person because of, some reason, and that reason is, against, age, race, the things we don't discriminate against, or taking it even further, I'm going to send all my development offshore and take away jobs from the U.S. I mean, what does that mean? And is that ethical, or is that just good business sense? I mean, there's a lot of interplay there. Nice thing is there's no real wrong answer here. The only wrong answer is not doing it. So with that, I will see you next week.